Imagine having the world in the palm of your hand at 22 years old. Imagine being told you are the chosen one, the heir to the throne of Tiger Woods, the man who will never lose. Now imagine waiting. Imagine 12 years of silence. 12 years of walking past a trophy you aren't allowed to touch. 12 years of the world watching you break, over and over again, in the final hour of the final day. On April 12, 2026, the world finally stopped holding its breath. Rory McIlroy did the impossible. He didn't just win the Masters, he completed a decade-long exorcism. But to understand why a grown man wept on the 18th green 2 weeks ago, you have to understand the ghost that followed him there. You have to go back to a tiny house in Northern Ireland, a washing machine, and a father who worked 4 jobs just to keep a dream from dying. This isn't just a story about golf. It's a story about the weight of being perfect and the price of finally becoming a legend. Hollywood is a quiet, seaside town where the rain always feels like it's just 5 minutes away. It isn't exactly the place you'd look for a sporting revolution. But inside the McIlroy household, something supernatural was happening. His mother, Rosie, and his father, Jerry, didn't see a golfer at first. They just saw a boy who wouldn't put the club down. Most kids his age were obsessed with cartoons. Rory was obsessed with a target. There's a legendary clip of a 7-year-old Rory chipping balls into his mother's washing machine. It's cute, sure, but look closer at his eyes. There is a terrifying level of focus for a child. He wasn't playing a game. He was practicing a craft. His father, Jerry, saw the spark and made a choice that changed history. Jerry didn't come from money. He was a bartender, a cleaner, a man of the working class. To fund Rory's travel and equipment, Jerry worked 4 jobs. He worked from dawn until long after the sun went down, coming home with sore feet and tired eyes, all so his son could stand on a manicured fairway. That's the pressure Rory grew up with. Not the pressure of a scoreboard, but the silent pressure of a father's sacrifice. Every time Rory swung a club, he knew what it cost. By the time he was a teenager, Rory was a local myth. He wasn't just good, he was a freak of nature. He had a swing that defied physics, a combination of violent speed and surgical balance. But more than the swing, he had a personality that the world fell in love with. He was Roars. He was curly-headed, fast-talking, and walked with a bounce in his step like he owned every blade of grass he stepped on. He was the kid who could go from a shy interview to a 350-yard drive in the blink of an eye. At 16, he shot a 61 at Royal Portrush. At 17, he was the #1 amateur in the world. He turned pro with the weight of an entire nation on his shoulders, and he did it with a smile. He was the Hollywood prodigy, the boy who could do no wrong. But golf has a way of waiting until you're at your highest point before it cuts your legs out from under you. Rory was about to head to America to claim his throne. He had no idea that the golden boy was about to meet a monster that he wouldn't be able to outrun for 15 years. When Rory turned pro in 2007, he didn't just join the tour, he ignited it. Most rookies spend years grinding in the shadows, hoping to keep their playing rights. Rory earned his in 2 weeks. At 18, he was already staring down the veterans, moving through the field with a swagger that felt more like an inevitability than a debut. By 2009, he found his first win in the desert of Dubai. But the golf world was waiting for the real test. They were waiting for America. If Dubai was the spark, Quail Hollow was the explosion. Rory didn't just win his first tournament in the States. He closed with a 62. A 62. He was the youngest winner since Tiger Woods. The comparisons weren't just whispers anymore, they were headlines. He was the chosen one. He was the heir. But every hero's rise has a moment where the ground gives way. For Rory, it was the 2011 Masters. He had a 4-shot lead on Sunday. The green jacket was in his locker. And then, in the span of an hour, he shot an 80. He didn't just lose, he unraveled in front of millions. We watched a boy's heart break in real time. Critics said he was too soft. They said the pressure was too heavy for those young shoulders. They said he might never recover. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The Demolition Derby. 8 weeks after the greatest collapse in golf history, Rory McIlroy showed up to the US Open, the hardest test in the sport, And he didn't just play. He sought revenge. He didn't just win, he broke the tournament. He finished 16 under par, a score that defied logic for a US Open. He won by 8 strokes. While the rest of the field was struggling for air, Rory was breathing a different kind of oxygen. He had turned the ultimate tragedy into the ultimate triumph in record time. A year later, he did it again. Kiowa Island. The wind was howling off the Atlantic, the kind of weather that ruins careers. Rory treated it like a walk in the park. Another major. Another 8-shot victory. He was 23 years old with 2 majors and the world #1 ranking. He was hitting the ball higher, further, and straighter than anyone ever had. He was playing a version of golf that looked like it was being played on a different planet. But then came the summer of 2014. If you weren't there to see it, it's hard to describe the feeling of watching Rory McIlroy that July and August. It wasn't sport. It was an eclipse. First, he went to Royal Liverpool and led the Open Championship from the very first shot to the very last. He looked untouchable. Then, he went to the Bridgestone Invitational and won. Then, 7 days later, he arrived at Valhalla for the PGA Championship. In a frantic, rain-delayed finish in near-total darkness, Rory willed himself to victory. 3 wins in 3 starts. 2 of them were majors. He was 25 years old, and he had 4 major championships in the bag. Only 2 other men had ever done that, Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods. In that moment, standing on the green at Valhalla with the trophy in his hands, Rory McIlroy wasn't just the best golfer in the world. He was the king of the sport. He was untouchable. He was a titan. The Grand Slam, the final piece of the puzzle, was only 1 Masters win away. Felt like a certainty. We all thought he'd be the first man to win 20 majors. We thought the reign of Rory would last forever. We had no way of knowing that the light was about to fade. We didn't know that for Rory McIlroy, the hardest part of the journey hadn't even begun. In 2014, we thought Rory McIlroy was untouchable. We thought the only question left was how many majors he would win before he retired. But sports has a cruel way of turning a king into a target. For the next decade, Rory didn't just play golf. He became the unofficial soul of the game. When the LIV golf controversy fractured the sport in 2022, Rory didn't hide in a private jet. He stood at the podium. He became the shield for the PGA Tour, taking arrows from former friends and billionaires alike. But while he was busy fighting for the tradition of the game, something was happening to his own. The burden of being the leader began to bleed into the player. The critics, once silent, became deafening. They said he was too distracted. They said he cared more about boardroom politics than his backswing. And then, there were the Sunday scars. Between 2015 and 2023, Rory finished in the top 10 of majors nearly 20 times. Think about that. He was almost always there, lurking, breathing down the neck of the leader. But every time the pressure reached a boiling point on the final 9 holes, the magic vanished. A missed 3-footer here, a hooked drive there. It wasn't that he wasn't good enough. It was that he was carrying too much. Then, in May 2024, the world found out that the weight wasn't just on the course. Just days after a victory in North Carolina, news broke that Rory had filed for divorce from his wife, Erica. The golden boy was human after all. His life was in flux, his marriage was in the headlines, and the man who seemed to have it all was suddenly staring into an abyss of personal and professional turmoil. He was lonely at the top, and for the first time in his life, the bounce in his step was gone. It all came to a head at the 2024 US Open at Pinehurst. This was supposed to be the moment the drought ended. This was supposed to be the redemption. Rory had a 2-shot lead with 5 holes to play. He was playing beautiful, gutsy golf. But then, the ghosts of the last 10 years walked onto the green. On the 16th hole, he missed a par putt from 2.5 feet. The world gasped. Then, on the 18th, it happened again. In 4 minutes, a decade of work went up in smoke. He didn't stay for the trophy ceremony. He didn't offer a quote. He went straight to his car and drove away into the North Carolina night. The internet exploded. He's a choker. He's mentally broken. The era of Rory is over. Even the legends of the game began to wonder if he'd ever recover from a scar that deep. He retreated into total silence, withdrawing from tournaments and disappearing from the public eye. This was the downfall, not a sudden drop to the bottom of the rankings, but a slow, agonizing realization that the man who was meant for greatness was becoming a tragedy. He had reclaimed his marriage, withdrawing the divorce papers a month later, but the golfer Rory was still lost in the woods. By early 2025, people weren't asking when he'd win his next major. They were asking if he even wanted to play anymore. He was 35 years old. He had the money. He had the fame. But he didn't have the peace. He was a titan who had forgotten how to win, a king who had lost his kingdom to younger, hungrier lions like Scottie Scheffler. The world was ready to write the final chapter of Rory McIlroy. And that chapter was titled The Great What If. But the thing about rock bottom is that the only way left to look is up. And in the spring of 2026, Rory McIlroy decided he wasn't done being the protagonist of this story. He was about to go back to the one place that had hurt him the most. He was going back to Augusta, and this time he wasn't bringing the world with him. He was just bringing a boy from Hollywood. They say time heals all wounds, but in golf, time is just a reminder of what you haven't done. For Rory McIlroy, arriving at Augusta National in 2026 felt like walking back into a courtroom where he had been found guilty a dozen times before. But something was different this spring. The noise, the interviews about the future of the game, the defense of the tour, the pressure of being a spokesperson, it had all been silenced. He had resigned from the boards. He had stepped out of the spotlight. For the first time in 15 years, Rory McIlroy wasn't playing for us. He was playing for the kid in the kitchen in Hollywood. On Sunday afternoon, the ghosts tried to come back. They always do. They whispered on the 10th fairway where he'd unraveled in 2011. They lingered on the greens where he'd stumbled in 2024. But Rory didn't look back. He didn't look at the leaderboards. He didn't talk to the cameras. He played with a cold, quiet fury that we hadn't seen since that summer in Valhalla. On the 16th, the same hole that had broken his heart at Pinehurst, he drained a 20-footer for birdie. He didn't scream. He didn't fist pump. He just nodded. It was the nod of a man who finally knew the ending to his own story. 2 weeks ago, the wait ended. 12 years, 47 majors, 1,000 questions. All of it vanished the moment that green jacket was draped over his shoulders. With that win, Rory McIlroy didn't just reclaim his spot as world number one. He did something only 5 other men in the history of this sport have ever done. He completed the career Grand Slam. He walked into the fire of a decade-long drought and came out the other side a titan. We spent a decade asking if Rory McIlroy was still great. We spent years wondering if he'd ever be the man we thought he'd be. But maybe we were asking the wrong questions. Maybe the greatness wasn't in the 8-shot wins or the record-breaking scores. Maybe the greatness was in the getting back up. It was in the silence after Pinehurst. It was in the decision to keep swinging when the whole world was waiting for him to fail. Rory McIlroy is no longer the golden boy with the curly hair and the easy smile. He is a man who was broken by the game and chose to put himself back together, piece by grueling piece. He didn't just finish the story. He proved that even after the longest night, the sun eventually finds the fairway. For 15 years, he chased the ghost of who he was supposed to be, only to realize that the legend was waiting for him exactly where he started. In the dirt, with a club in his hand and a dream that refused to die.